What I thought might be fun is to explain and to introduce you to the team. We've got a bunch of behind the scenes players. Some of those are human and some of them maybe you would call inanimate objects, but a lot of them have got names and I'd just like to share with you who those guys are. So I'd like to introduce you to Muck. And we've had Muck for about 8 years. And she's called Muck because everywhere she goes she leaves a bit of a muck. So she's been one of the most difficult machines to master, not from an actual get the job done perspective, but from a not see the trails of her arriving and leaving perspective. She weighs 4.5 tons, she's Japanese, she's a Kubota, and I really love the Kubotas because they just seem to be very reliable. And I'm not a mechanic by design. I do like to do most of the maintenance myself because I like to get close and up front dirty with the machines, but the Kubotas don't need a lot of work. So she's 4.5 tons, she can lift 2.6 tons, so if you imagine the biggest family's wagon, she can pick that up and pretty much throw it. She's got a bucket here and also has forklift. She can also raise up to 3 meters, so you can clean gutters with her, literally. She wouldn't be at the gutter level, she'd be at the ground level, and then the person who would be disobeying all the occupational health and safety standards of Australia would be up cleaning the gutter. I can give you a bit of a sense of how she sounds and how she operates if you like, and I'll do that next, shall I? So now let's meet Muck. Let's see what she can do and how she feels. Firstly, I want to say she's diesel, and we would love electric if we could because we're all about the environment and sustainability. But there isn't an electric option for this, so diesel is the best option we've got for Muck. She's a bit noisy, she's a bit smelly, but not too bad. So these are a safety mechanism, so she'll shut off when these are up or down. She loves to make beeps and stuff. So there you go, that's her started. And she does lots of tricks. So she's got a 4-in-1 bucket. Which can open and close, tip. It's actually a 6-in-1 bucket. And she can even do that. Pretty cool, huh? So what does she do? She moves materials. So she moves materials from one side of the property to the other. So stuff like rocks, dirt, gravel, heavy bits of kit, that's what she's for. She's also useful for loading material into other stuff. So yeah, she is an all-around kind of a girl. And because she's tracked and we're on very steep land, that means that she's really stable. We're also pretty wet quite a bit of the time because we're in the rainforest, and those tracks are much more likely to have traction than if we have a wheeled bobcat. And she's not a bobcat, she's a skid steer. So yeah, this is Muck, and I'm just really pleased to introduce her to her. She's a lot of fun. Okay, so let me introduce you to Scoop. So Scoop as in Bob the Builder, Scoop, Muck and Dizzy. Scoop was my first bit of major equipment, and that came from all the work we did when we first bought the retreat. There was a huge amount of earth moving and a whole host of kind of underground trenches and retaining walls. And during that period I learnt firstly the cost of a contractor, then I appreciated the skill of a contractor, and then I made my first meeting with a machine that might be my own. So I think Scoop was born somewhere in the 80s or early 90s. She's a Jap import, so Kubota doesn't support her completely, very well. So I've put about 500 hours on her, which equates to about $70,000 or $80,000 worth of work if I was to use a contractor. I'm now pretty good. I don't do any external contracting, but I use her for digging trenches, for digging around weeds, the big trees that are weeds, which are camphor laurel, and we've got quite a camphor laurel infestation here. So I dig around the base of the tree with like a big finger, and then once the roots have been broken, I can push them over. And if you just cut them down with a chainsaw, unless you use poison, they come back. And because we're committed to environmental sustainability, we don't want to put poison on even the weeds, because it gets into the ground, and then if it's in the ground, it goes into the groundwater. So she weighs 4.5 tonne. She'll lift about 500 kilos, and she'll do that with a grab or with a bucket. And I've got a range of buckets that are kind of from this narrow, which is just for like a electricity wire or a water pipe, all the way through to something that's about that wide, which is about, you know, smoothing a large area, making a nice, smooth, kind of curvaceous, rolling hill. We typically don't use her to impinge on the land. It's about working with the contours and the natural parts of the land. We don't want to screw up habitat for any critters, and we don't want to knock over any, you know, decent Australian trees. But it's a free-for-all on the weeds, and she does a great job for that. So she weighs 4.5 tonne. She's about 35 or 40 years old. She's pretty old. She's in really great condition, and I can tell you that she's a diesel engine, about 2.2 litres, and about 45 kilowatts. Unfortunately, she's always had a bit of a limp, so when I climb the hills, she kind of steers to one side, and that's been an ongoing issue. And we've got a bunch of trees that we need to remove, camphors, weeds that we need to remove over the next 6 months, and having a machine that can't track up and down hills safely and stop safely without moving just wasn't a good option. So we had some trouble with her moving. I had some trouble with her moving, took her to the hydraulic shop. They diagnosed the problem, and we've now given her a couple of new drive motors. So she now goes pretty fast. As a result of that, that then blew the center joint. So right now she's pretty unhappy actually, and we're waiting for some gaskets to arrive so that she can go back into operation. She's been out of operation for about 3 weeks. So she and her are both pretty unhappy about that. But when she's going, she is just the best implement for digging trenches, removing rocks, removing trees, digging around the roots of trees and pushing them over, and then turning them into chips. So yeah, this is Scoop.